like during family gatherings or when you see your family once in a while, they ask you, oh, how you're doing. But second question is, so where are you studying, you know? And it's not that the question is kind of negative, but it's sort of like the notion around the question, sort of like.
I want to ask you, how are you doing right now?
I'm doing much better. Yeah, I'm doing much better right now, and seeing my friends and everyone. Yeah, I'm in a better mental headspace for sure.
So when did the idea of taking a leave of absence for you happen?
Yeah, so it occurred to me probably about 2 months into college, but I was struggling a lot with anxiety, and I actually have been struggling with anxiety my whole life really, but after starting to take medication in my senior year of high school, I started tapering off, so started to take less and less, gradually be off medication, which wasn't the best idea, but I did it with the guidance of my psychiatrist. And obviously that turned out not to be the best idea because I struggled a fair share with anxiety, and it just got to the point where I couldn't concentrate what was right in front of me, and my mind was just always spiraling down with these things that eventually accumulated to a burnout.
So do you think like Thai culture of like trying to get into a good university in order to have a good image, a good reputation has affected the anxiety as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I think yeah, particularly schools in Thailand, you know, like when you compare and contrast with the US, like I don't think that, as you know, US high schools, there are people who obviously strive for Ivies, strive for top 20s, etc. But I think that the culture isn't really centered around kind of equating students' worth to the places they get in, right? But in Thailand, you know, like during family gatherings or when you see your family once in a while, they ask you, oh, how you're doing. But second question is, so where are you studying, you know? And it's not that the question is kind of negative, but it's sort of like the notion around the question, sort of like, oh, where do you go to school? Is it prestigious? Is it, you know, is it in the US? Like, what school is it? Sort of this like notion of prestige that surrounds school makes us, you know, equate our values to the name of the school that we attend. And even I'm guilty of that, you know, like when I ask someone and ask which school they're from, I sort of like equate their work ethic, their morals, their whatever to the school they attend, when it's just a part of their life and it's not something that defines them. Yeah.
I once heard like a quote from our friend. He did a TED Talk, and he's one of our best friends, Todd. And he once talked about the question you raised about the question a lot of parents ask us a lot about, oh, which university are you going to, what career are you pursuing? And he told in his TED Talk, he asked us as an audience in his TED Talk that why don't we change the question from what university do you want to go to or what career do you want to pursue to what impact are you going to create and what are you going to leave behind? What mark are you going to leave behind? And I feel like this idea of having an impact and leaving a mark would be a better question to ask a lot of new generation kids, because no matter what job they do, no matter what university they go to, I feel like they would be able to do something very impactful and could possibly change the world if we ask them these questions instead of, oh, what university going through, you know?
Yeah, definitely agree with that. And I think like similarly, I've actually heard like, I came across this like comment on a YouTube video saying that before people wanted to get into a good school to cure cancer, but now people want to cure cancer to get into a good school. So basically what that quote means is that then the value of education was valued based on its actual value, but now people end up wanting to become this big, amazing person and, you know, basically have all these accomplishments by 18 in order to just get accepted into a prestigious university. And I think this notion has, not this notion, sorry, I think this quote has really stuck with me because I never really understood what people meant by passion projects. You know, I don't know if you've heard, but kind of, oh, like pursue your passion, create these passion projects and do what you really want to do. But I never really understood that because in high school, in, you know, pre-K through 12, you're always taught what to do. You're always told what to do, what your tasks are, your responsibilities. We've never had the chance or opportunity to pursue other things apart from school, or at least for me, because school is hard enough, you know, attaining good grades or really catching up to school is hard enough. Like, I don't have time to pursue something else, you know, outside of school. So I never really understood what the passion project meant. All I knew from the term passion project was that let's show college that you're worth getting into, which is not really the premise of it, right? But now that I've had this time to reflect and this time to just take a rest, I don't have any responsibilities, no obligations. Like, I truly know that, okay, I truly am starting to find what really makes me happy and really what I'm passionate about, whether that be writing or even just like coming to talk to you today or just like talking to people, sharing my experience. Like, that's truly where passion stems from and not the societal obligations that I'm told.
I think sometimes you just have to take a break and just, you know, look from like the back and see yourself what you want to do. So right now it's college admissions for a lot of 12th graders, some in ISB, some in other schools. Do you think you can give like any advice for kids who are trying to apply and might not get in, might get in, you know?
Yeah, well, regardless, like, your life's gonna continue. I think like we can both agree on that. Like, whether or not you get in or you don't, like, life is gonna go on and you're gonna go on too. But I think it's pretty useless, we can agree on this, that, you know, if I told you to not care about grades or don't care about that, like, of course rejection's gonna hurt, you know, like any type of, like, college admissions, rejection especially, is going to hurt. And I can't not tell you not to focus on that because that's basically your future, you know, like, that's basically kind of the trajectory of your life for the next 4 years. Not the rest of your life, but just for these next 4 years are gonna be important. But I think for me, like, I wish that I could just really see that there is life beyond college. Once you get into college, you don't just, it's not just about academics. It's not just about, okay, let's build your resume in college. It is now about trying to survive in college. You know, a lot of the times when we go to school abroad or university in other countries, we struggle to adjust, as I'm sure you've also had that experience, but we struggle to survive and adjust with the environment. And the past 4 years, whatever you've done, it really doesn't matter anymore because you're just so focused on, you know, the next 4 years or just trying to survive or live in this moment, or at least that was the experience for me. So I think if you're in high school or, you know, you're applying to colleges right now, just think about the past year, you know, like, how much does the past year matter to you? Perhaps it does, perhaps you've forgotten about it. But I think that if I were to go back to 12th grade and really kind of reevaluate my mindset, then I try to surround myself with the people who will hold value in my life and who reciprocate the same sort of energy and value in my life. And I think it's really important to find something that truly makes you happy beyond school or beyond the academic obligations, because once you get out of school, no one's going to tell you what to do anymore, and that's scary to me. That's very scary because you have to figure out things yourself, but also no one's gonna be there for you to fall upon, as much as you had a lot of assignments in school, but you kind of knew the trajectory of where your life was going. But once you get out of school, you have to figure that all on your own. You don't know if that's good or bad. And I think that's kind of like the value in growing up and just finding your independence in life.
So what are you doing right now?
Honestly, I'm not doing anything. I just want to really take this time to just rest and not having to feel like I have to do something all the time. And, it's kind of weird as well, like from school, you're constantly doing something all the time, and now I'm just not doing anything, and just learning that my worth is not from the work, but just from the value of me living and having a good time. But saying that, of course, like I have been interested in a few things, of course, coming back home, having the liberty to pursue whatever I want now for the, the remaining time. I've been writing a bit, and some of them not published, but just sort of externalizing what I feel into paper.
And I've once read your papers before. You written for Thai Inquirer, right? There was this one paper you wrote about sexual assault in Thai media. We want to talk about it?
Yeah. So that was actually inspired by the protests, right? The pro-democracy protests. And there was this one woman who came out to speak upon her sexual assault experiences, but in fact, she was faced with so much backlash by people on the internet who didn't even know about her experiences, claiming that, oh, you're not a university student anymore. Why are you spreading false lies and damaging the school's reputation, And sort of these comments that not only are ignorant, but just show how shallow they are and how much they want to save the prestige of institutions, or basically the saving face society that we often hear. And I think it really goes to show how, if she's faced with this much backlash now, imagine her coming out as a student. Who's going to believe her? She's just a student. And just how much more would these comments really hurt her as a child? And now, a few years later, she's coming out to speak about her story. Like, I can't imagine having to go through that. And I applaud her so much for the courage and bravery it takes, right? But it also goes to show that schools, despite schools having to be safe spaces where they educate students and foster a safe environment for students, it in fact, does not protect students always. And it, in my opinion, is also because of the power that teachers have, or maybe faculties have, over these students. And of course, I'm not talking about all schools or all teachers, all faculties, but in environments where transparency isn't assured, and in environments where teachers are sort of more dominant than students, and students are sort of the more submissive, reserved, and having to be submissive to teachers. And this allows perpetrators to really roam around in environments like these as the teacher who committed the sexual assault, and be let free because he has all this power, like no one's gonna believe her. And so I think that not only the safety in schools that I wanted to talk about, but also the misogyny in Thai society, how victim blaming is so prevalent, like even just wearing, like what I'm wearing right now, a crop top and shorts, they're deemed inappropriate, or I have to cover up more. Like, we live in Thailand.
ใส่เสื้อโปไปนะ
Yeah. Like, we live in Thailand, like it's not snowing out here. Like, yeah, that's just the reality. And just women constantly being shamed for dressing a certain way, for acting a certain way, for not fitting into the mold of this conservative mindset. And I think because the Thailand's sort of conservative mindset perpetuated through ages, despite other countries, like going so far with innovations and stuff. I think it's because of the structural system in Thailand, the administrators, the ministers being very of a senior age group, not so diverse. A lot of old people with connections where it's easier for them to retain power instead of having more diversity in these ministries, and I think that because young people aren't allowed to express their voices and speak about what they believe in, it's such a narrow mindset, and it's a very homogenous mindset and very conservative that's passed on through generations, and hence why we're still, being shamed for the way we dress, or if a woman is raped or sexually assaulted, they're blamed for, their doings, even though statistics really do say that it does not matter, what we dress or how we dress, but these crimes occur because of the perpetrator, not the victim.
And that is when the idea comes in that we should teach the people who commit these crimes why it's not okay to commit them, instead of telling women to don't dress like this, don't dress like that. But the problem is actually on the perpetrators.
Right.
And the problem is so easy to see, but we just have this narrow mindset that, it's, we have to blame this person who's dressing up like that. And it comes to this question of, is sexual education in Thailand okay? It's because I feel like only international schools teach sex education, but in like Thai schools, I don't think they don't. And most of them learn sex education from porn, a lot of them.
Yeah, this is actually a point I also want to touch upon, because again, I personally don't know like how much, to what extent they teach sex education in Thai schools or even in some international schools, right? But like I remember in health class, right, teaching about protection, consent, I think consent, and a lot of that stuff. But I think sex education is more than just that. I think because people, because younger people especially are very curious about sex ed. And of course it's natural to have that curiosity, but instead of them learning these information through school, as you said, they turn to porn or Pornhub or whatever sexually explicit websites that they turn to. And these porn websites aren't for education, they're supposedly entertainment, for a certain audience. And kids, especially younger than, 18, 17, 16, shouldn't be watching such graphic things without the guidance or without the knowledge they know already, because porn doesn't teach consent. Porn doesn't teach real sex, because porn isn't real sex. It's an act. It's a movie. It's like when we're watching movies. Film. It's not real. It's just, how the director chooses to craft that narrative. So it's really important that we not only teach about protection, but we also teach about consent. We have to emphasize what consent is, and that you can't just go around fulfilling your supposed pleasures, by harassing, assaulting others. And I think this also brings me to the next point, where I think we should be taught about pleasure in sex experiences, whether that be male or female pleasure. And I think especially the porn industry being quite dominated by male directors, it's depicted porn in a way where it sort of fulfills the male pleasure and kind of neglects the female needs. And I think that there must be more representation of sort of kind of female pleasure in the media, but also in educating students and educating kids about, like, it's okay to feel pleasure, because that's part of being human, like sex shouldn't be such a taboo subject where people cringe about it, and you're told that, oh, it's very inappropriate, you shouldn't talk about it. And the more people do something that they feel is taboo, the less that they try to seek out information, the less that they try to seek out what's correct and really feel like they're doing something illegal. So they continue doing that without really, acknowledging what it truly is.
And also, like, one more thing other than porn is I love Thai soap operas. And that is when a lot of Thai kids watch. And that is when a lot of rape and sexual assault occurs in. And I feel like that also ties in with your point as well.
Yeah.
And I solely admit that I feel like sex education isn't enough, because I feel like before I didn't really understand or really grasp the idea of rape culture, the things you talk about, victim blaming, consent, all these things, until I met with my ex. And even though she probably hates me a lot, but she was the one who taught me all these things. And I really want to thank her a lot, because I feel like it allowed me to improve as a person, as a human, allowing me to understand the opposite sex a lot more than I knew before. And I feel like I'm just so happy, because I feel like it allowed me to open my mind up, look at things with different perspectives.
And yeah, I think that's very, very important. Just learning about the rape culture in the Thai media, where it's so prevalent. And there are like reruns of soap operas,
Yeah, a lot.
which like they're very problematic in their time and now. And the fact that they have these constant reruns, especially with COVID, like it's just beyond problematic. And and I really admire that people are starting to speak up now, but I don't think it's sort of just enough, because a lot of people still do watch the television and stuff. But I think it was also hearing from you, right? But like there was an article about just the graphic like rape scenes in Thai soap operas, and you kind of writing about how people want to sensationalize it as kind of the plot line, sort of ingraining this notion where you'll get raped if you're a certain type of person, and basically sort of shaming women for expressing their sexuality, because a lot of the times it still is kind of a flat character where good girls are people who are more reserved, or people who dress nicely, more, they dress nicely, and then people, like women who aren't really like bad women, or women who dress provocatively, or who just try to express their individuality or sexuality. And that is just shamed a lot in the Thai media. And I think that when people watch it a lot, they start ingraining that, and they start ingraining the notion that it's okay to do whatever to these women who express her sexuality because she wants it. And this, asking for it notion is really perpetuated in Thai lakorn and soap operas that I feel is really just making the problem worse. And by producers or directors maybe claiming that it adds realism, it really doesn't. It really doesn't. Like, if you want to add realism to these, soap operas or shows or movies, there are so many other aspects, You
have to add in.
That you can add in to make it
a perfect example of this is Mia Jampen. And I also want to touch upon this. So essentially the main character, the woman gets raped. And then the problem I have with the soap opera isn't the part where they get raped. And then you can show it. But what follows should be support from a lot of people around the woman. Not, her boyfriend, turning on her and just being disgusted at her. I feel like that's just,
Yeah.
It's so weird. And then he puts her back into the place where she got raped, and that's just that's so fucked up. And
Yeah.
instead of having people support the girl for getting raped, and you know, getting the person who committed that,
Getting her help that's needed. They in fact start shaming her. They start just, you know, putting so much scrutiny to her image, and, you know, saying that, wow, she's very dirty and she's really, like, she's not the same anymore because something happened to her that she wasn't even in control of. And I think this is, like, again, also perpetuated in society where, you know, like, I think people dress a certain way, people sort of have this picture of who she is or who they are. And it's not just women, right? But I also think the gay community in Thailand also gets this a lot, for expressing themselves a certain way, because I feel because of the conservatism in Thailand, it's so narrow. Like, everything is just so linear. You can't deviate from the social norm, because once you deviate, you just are treated differently. And also this also kind of segues into, you know, the topic of illegal gay marriage, like the topic of gay marriage that is still legal in Thailand, how it doesn't conform to the heteronormative norm, right? And, you know, like, and how it's still illegal. Why? Like, there is really no reason why it's still illegal, because Thailand capitalizes off of gay tourism a lot, you know, and they do make so much money for the economy when the country was open and stuff. And, like, why is it illegal? Like, I personally cannot think of any even political advantage to why they're making it illegal, except for the reason that they are just very conservative, close-minded, and are unable to accept differences that they're not used to, unable to accept anything apart from things that they're familiar with. And I think someone basically cited this one reason being why, you know, the court decided upon gay marriage not being legal, but that reason was that gay marriage isn't natural. And what do you mean by natural? Natural by definition means something that works, something that happens. And what's more unnatural about it is by forcing people into the closet, you know, forcing gay people to become straight, or forcing them to act a certain way to not be so gay, as, you know, the homophobic term goes. But yeah, that's just really fucked up in the Thai society that I see. And I think for me, like, being able to talk about it and for people to listen to it, write about it, or just kind of spreading these conversations can really open people's minds up to newer ideas that, you know, are different from what might be perpetuated in amongst, like, very conservative generations and their families.
Touching upon LGBT, it also relates to Thai media and Thai Lakon a lot. And growing up, I see a lot of over-the-top third sex gender stereotypes from a lot of characters in Thai soap operas. And I feel like they're mostly misrepresented. And I have a lot of friends who are gay or lesbian, and they're not like that at all.
Exactly.
But Thai media, Thai Lakon, Thai soap operas, they just make all the gay characters over the top, and I feel like it creates this cultural norm that they're weird, they're different.
Yeah, I think just like the word gay in Thai, tut or kathoy, it's a term where it's already kind of patronizing, or it's a term that's already derogatory. You know, it's already a derogatory term in its own sense that, you know, I don't really know, like, how it goes on from there, right? So I think just beginning with the term that, or I guess like the notion, the connotation around that term, really, like, that is already degrading. But I also think that, again, kind of similar to what we talked about, they like to sensationalize gay characters. And I think this comes from a lack of representation behind the scenes. You know, maybe directors or people behind the camera are mainly straight male, you know, who don't, and you know, and they don't have that diverse representation behind the camera, and what is behind the camera is shown through on camera. And now you see that, oh, there are stereotypes, you know, and gay characters are either made to like super buff, like macho, masculine, or not, then, you know, super funny and like people laugh at, but they're people in real life too. They're not just characters you laugh at. And when it translates to real life, like people expect them to be funny now that they consume so much media. They expect them to be kind of the joke
The
of
Joker.
the part. The Joker, basically. And that's just really not true. And you can kind of see that through Asian stereotypes in Hollywood, you know, that still perpetuate. That's really the same thing. And I think just the lack of representation in directors and people behind the scenes really are a very, like, that's such a big root cause to why gay people are displayed like that, are depicted in the media.
Okay, so is there anything you want to, you know, add upon about sex and LGBT?
Yeah, a topic I want to add on is regarding sex workers. And a lot of people call it prostitution, but in my opinion, prostitution, again, is such a derogatory term in the sense where it's like they're just a piece of object and they're just kind of selling themselves, you know, to prostitution, which in reality isn't true. And I think also what I want to differentiate, first of all, is that there's sex work where people consent to it and are not forced into it. And then there's also human trafficking, sexual exploitation. That is not what I'm talking about. That is illegal, and I am condemning that. But today I want to talk about sex workers where they consent to it and really want to pursue it as a career. So in terms of sex work, there is so much stigma all around the world, no matter where you're from. I think the only few countries where sex work is legal is in Europe. I don't want to say specifically, I don't know the facts, but there are certain parts of the world where it is legal. But in Thailand, where sex work is very prevalent, yet they are stigmatized a lot. And now we're just talking about sex workers, again, who come into by choice. But I think they're depicted as, you know, such a job to be like frowned upon, very dirty, or very something that people want to criminalize. But in fact, the more you criminalize it, it's not going to stop sex work. What's going to happen is that these sex workers, like any other workers, are going to be exploited easier if they get raped, which is possible because sex work is consensual sex. If they get raped, they don't get protection because the police or, you know, whoever is arresting them would claim that they kind of let themselves into it, when in reality it's not. It's sort of like when you work at a customer service, some retail company, and you get yelled at by customers, very rudely yelled at when you're doing your job. You know, like, you're not just gonna, other people aren't gonna say that, oh, well, you deserved it because you signed up for it. Well, they signed up for customer service. Not to be yelled at very rudely, or to, in some instances, be spat at, be thrown something towards. Like, that is not what they signed up for, and they can file a complaint for that. You know, and I think similarly with sex workers, they should have the same rights as any other jobs, careers in Thailand. But unfortunately, people don't even recognize them as people to begin with. People don't even recognize them as workers to begin with. And so I think, again, sex workers in Thailand especially, you know, kind of sex tourism in Thailand is pretty huge as well. They don't get enough rights, and they also are looked down upon for being a very, kind of disgraceful job, when in reality they're just providing services, And Thailand really likes to pride itself upon being the land of, Buddhism, like
Smiles.
land of smiles, like being Muang Put, like, like Buddhism values, but it's not Buddhism values, Buddha never said anything about this. Like,
Kind of bullshit.
yeah, like it's really bullshit because people like to tie every argument into morals, like, oh, it's against Thai morals, it's against Thai culture. Really? Like, are you saying me? I think, like, also I heard, like people say, oh, wearing shorts is against Thai culture. Are you no? Wearing tank tops, crop tops. In fact, before, people would wear, like nong pa,
yeah.
which basically is today's equivalent of, what's it called, strapless top or whatever. Yeah, a tube top, like it's today's equivalent, but yet people wore it so many, 100 years ago, but it was fine. So culture is constantly shifting, and you can't, in some settings, you can't argue.
Narrow-minded.
Yeah, you can't argue using culture as a reason because it's always changing. You can't use, you can't cite culture as an ethical reason because it's always changing. You can't. And I think coming back to sex workers, right? When you say that, oh, it's against morals, it's against values, what values is it against? You're not, I think consensual sex work, right? And if you're already in an open relationship, of course, that's no problem. But some people say that, oh, it's destroying marriages, maybe, it's distracting men and, it's bringing, which isn't true. It's not the sex worker's fault. It's the man's fault, or it's whomever is using the service and as an affair to cheat on their partner or, kind of seek that escape. It's not the sex worker's fault, but it's whomever is using it in the wrong way. It's literally like any other service, right? Yeah. It's like you could be using social media to exploit people. Like, are you gonna blame Apple? I mean, are you gonna blame like people who sell iPhones at a store? No, like it's the person who's using technology in a way that is in a bad way. So yeah, I really do advocate for sex workers' rights and for Thailand to talk about this more openly without it being such a taboo subject.
So now we covered a lot of things. We covered sex, LGBT, and anxiety. Let's take a step back a bit, and if you given a chance to go back to ISB, 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, and repeat everything again, what do you want to change? Is there anything you want to change?
I mean, honestly, I don't know. Like, honestly, I don't think I'd really want to change anything because, as corny as it may sound, like I do learn from these mistakes, and I do learn from such experiences that shape my path into, where I'm heading now. And maybe I could tell myself to have more fun, to enjoy life more and all of that. But I think it's very hard to give yourself advice now that you know so much. But if you were to go back without these experiences, you wouldn't be able to get to where you are now. But I would say that I'd want to prioritize my mental health, my happiness always first. That will always be my utmost priority because you really can't function without a good mental headspace, without a good mind, because like your body, like you have to take care of your mind. It's part of your health. And by neglecting it, the only thing that happens is that the stress, anxiety eventually just accumulates to a burnout. But I would say that I am very glad that I did take the necessary steps to where I am today.
So this is probably the last question, but so is there anything you want to say to your parents? They might be
Okay.
watching. They might be watching.
Okay. I hope they're not, but in the case where they are, I would like to thank my mom, first off, for just supporting me so much, for trying to understand me as much as I can, even though I might be, very rude at times, but I would like to thank her a lot for just being my mom and just being by my side all the time, trying to understand what's going on and not just trying to fix the problems all the time. I think just being there to listen is something that's very important. And for my dad, I would just like to say to you, to not worry about things so much. I think kind of my dad, being born in a very much older generation, there's also this linear life path where you can't really deviate from the norm. And taking leave of absence, my dad might think that I want to drop out, but not yet, not yet, like we're not there yet. But I just think I need this time to rest, and there's really nothing wrong with it. If I were to go back and change everything, of course I want to prevent this from happening, but I couldn't have, and like this is the only this was the only way for me to really learn for myself how important my health is. And so, yeah, just the importance of health first. And so I just want you to trust me and, kind of let go a bit in terms of me not pursuing the path you might have in your mind, or, a very stable path that a lot of parents do have, because it's okay to, that your life doesn't follow what society says you be at a certain age.
Amazing. And of course, mental health has to be 100% the most important thing I feel like everyone should care about. And when you're fine, when you're working, when you're okay, I know you're gonna change the world. I know you're gonna change the world.
Thank you.
In 10 years, 20 years, you'll be changing the world.
I appreciate
I'm
that.
so I'm looking forward to see
Yeah,
to see it.
that's an honor. Thank you.